So it's been 1 year since Hogwarts Legacy released, a game that delivered on the fantasy and dreams of Harry Potter fans all over the world. For years and years, Harry Potter fans wanted a game that would take them to Hogwarts as a student to get up to no good, just like the characters from the books and the movies. Now, we've gotten Harry Potter games in the past, but they were basically movie tie-in games that, let's be honest, for the most part, were absolutely awful.
I'm off to the leaky cauldron for a few butterbeers if you need me.
But then a relatively unknown developer by the name of Avalanche Software came along, whose previous title was a game that most people probably hadn't even heard of, and they managed to deliver a childhood fantasy for millions and millions and deliver it in a way that was universally praised, made over $1 billion, and actually delivered on what it set out to do. Hogwarts Legacy is a game that I absolutely love, despite the fact it has a few problems. I have completed the game twice and recently decided to jump back into it to see if it was as good as I remember. If 1 year on from its release, it still delivers the magic that only an open world Harry Potter game possibly could. So we're going to dive deep into Hogwarts Legacy, the good, the bad, and the in-between. Was this game worth the hype it created a year ago, or was it a mediocre game hiding behind the facade of a realized childhood dream? Well, let's find out. When I heard there was going to be an open world Harry Potter game, I was basically just expecting it to get cancelled or something because it was, and no exaggeration here, a dream come true for me. Look, there have always been two games that I have ever wanted. A Game of Thrones open world game and a Harry Potter open world game. So to say that I was excited when I realized that one of those two was actually going to be happening would be an understatement. I watch the movies multiple times a year. I've read through the books twice. I love spending time in this world. It's a place of comfort, and to be able to immerse myself into that in my favorite entertainment medium, that being video games, I just simply couldn't wait. Hogwarts Legacy is a game where you can play as a mysterious 5th year student at the iconic Hogwarts school. You could create and customize your character. You could attend classes, explore the iconic castle and the surrounding grounds, get your own wand, be put into your favorite house. It was truly a dream come true for millions, something we just never seen fully realized on this scale in a video game before. Yet, funnily enough, it got absolutely no recognition come video game awards season, which felt kind of strange to me, especially given how beloved the game seemed to be. So knowing that it was about to be 1 year since the game came out, I went back and played through it again, because I'm not going to lie, this game could have been a travesty of open world design and the story could have been complete garbage, and I still would have loved it because of what the game is. But now that that novelty of the game's concept has kind of worn off, I feel like I can objectively look at things, because I think in many ways, Hogwarts Legacy is a great game, but it commits many gaming crimes that are often the reason that I refuse to play the latest Assassin's Creed title or Far Cry. If I was to sum up Hogwarts Legacy, I'd say it's a solid game hiding behind the novelty of the Harry Potter IP, giving the illusion that it's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Now, whatever you do, do not take that in a negative way, because I absolutely love this game. I often boot it up just to walk around Hogwarts and jump on a broom and fly around the castle, because that's where this game thrives. But when you peel back the layers on a game like this, you often start to realize that some things are more flawed than you might initially think.
Feet off the table!
For example, the first time I played the game, I had the time of my life, and it was my game of the year, no doubt about it. But the second time I played through, I started to notice many issues the game had that I was simply ignoring because of the wow factor the game provided. Like, the loot system didn't annoy me the first time I played, because screw that, man, I'm a student and I'm walking around Hogwarts, who gives a shit about the loot system? And for many people, that's all they need this game to be. Hell, that's all I needed it to be. But if we're gonna analyze this game in a, 1 year later retrospective style, we have to be transparent with what the game objectively offers. And unfortunately, it does have underlying flaws that really break through when you take the time to sit and judge the game fairly. Many people consider Hogwarts Legacy to be a great open world Harry Potter game, but a bad RPG, and I think that's fair. If you strip this game of its ties to the wizarding world, what is left? So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork and established what this game is, what it offers, and its potential drawbacks, let's actually dive deep into the specifics of Hogwarts Legacy. The world of Hogwarts Legacy, there is so much to be said. This is probably going to take up the bulk of this video, to be perfectly honest, because there's just so much here and it's by far the thing that this game excels in the most. It is so easy to tell that the developers over at Avalanche were hardcore fans of Harry Potter. The world they built here is a perfect blend of both what we see in the movies and what we read in the books. You have the instantly noticeable iconography of the movies, but you have bits and pieces littered throughout the castle specifically that you'd immediately notice if you'd read the books. I distinctly remember on my first playthrough when I was standing in the Great Hall, and I looked at the ground and I turned into Mr. Ollivander.
I wonder.
I just had to know, so I made my way underneath where I thought the Great Hall would be, and to my shock, I saw a pear, I tickled it, and the kitchens under the Great Hall were in fact there. This was the exact moment that I knew that this game was made with a whole lot of love, not just people doing their job because they were told to. And that labor of love is felt throughout the entire world of Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts is simply phenomenal. I still stroll around the castle 1 year later in complete awe at what they managed to build here. You can explore everywhere. Everything from the prefect's bathroom to the astronomy tower. If it's in the movies or the books, it's probably here. It is so loyal to the source material. You can simply walk around the castle for dozens and dozens of hours and just get lost in the sense of discovery within the castle. And I think that is the biggest strength of Hogwarts Legacy. It's when you're doing the Leo DiCaprio pointing meme every time you walk past something you recognize. Now, you do have the option to fast travel around the castle at any given point due to the Flu network, which was actually a really smart integration for a fast travel system, I have to say. Apart from her not shutting up every time you walk past a fast travel point. Not that I ever really felt the need to fast travel when in Hogwarts specifically, like why would you? There's so much to see and do. There's pages to collect, puzzles to solve, ghost interactions, Easter eggs. It's simply a crime to fast travel inside this castle. When you leave the castle, however, that's where my tune changes a little bit. Now, when you're in the immediate grounds of Hogwarts, I think the world itself is simply incredible. Like, this is just a living and breathing world. But when you expand to the Highlands in the southern area of the map, that's where the magic starts to leave the game. I basically chalk it down to the further you get away from the castle, the less fun the game is. Like when I'm off doing a bunch of missions or fetch quests at the bottom of the map, I often find myself just wanting to go back to the castle grounds, or the Forbidden Forest, or even Hogsmeade. Like the way Avalanche brought to life the castle grounds is almost as impressive as the castle itself. I still remember walking to the Quidditch pitch for the first time and was just totally immersed in this world. I was standing in the middle of a Quidditch pitch with Hogwarts in the background, and I could just explore it all at my own free will, which for a major Harry Potter fan is simply mind-blowing. Same when I walked through the Forbidden Forest for the first time. It feels dangerous. It feels like a place where you shouldn't be. Or even Hogsmeade. It's just amazing to spend time here, especially in the winter sections of the game. Speaking of winter, you get to play through all the seasons here, just like the movies and the books. Winter, visually speaking, was the standout. As you progress through the story, the seasons change, offering a different tone to the game, and it made the world feel even more immersive, and it kept with the tradition of the movies and the books. Now, as amazing as this world is, it does have its drawbacks. A major problem I had with the game is how NPCs, which fill the castle and Hogsmeade specifically, barely react to anything that you do. You can spam spells at people in the castle and nobody cares. You might get the stray voice line of someone mentioning that you took out a troll in Hogsmeade, or a smug remark about you being a 5th year, but NPCs just go about their business regardless of what you really do. Which I find strange because they actually went to the length of making comments about your appearance if you take all your clothes off. So they'll mention that, but not you trying to murder them. If you use an unforgivable curse, there's almost no reaction at all, which is just mind-blowingly weird. Like, it's definitely clear that Avalanche had to cut quite a few things with this game. There are many key features missing, and I dare say including the fact that NPCs don't react is one of them. But the biggest thing the game is missing is obviously Quidditch, which they did try to address at the beginning of the game.
Oh, and one more thing. Due to the unfortunate injury on the pitch in last spring's final, this year's Quidditch season has been cancelled.
We can't cancel Quidditch.
There's also the complete omission of a proper house point system, which definitely alongside Quidditch felt like a major missed opportunity. Now, the reason I think the house point system was such a missed opportunity links up to one of my biggest problems with this game. That being that if you do a Dark Wizard playthrough, there's essentially zero consequences in doing so, like losing house points. It would have been really cool if your house lost points if you were being an evil little shit, because you can just unforgivable curse anyone you like and nobody bats an eye. My recent playthrough was as a Dark Wizard in Slytherin known as Lord Voldemort. Yes, I am a moron. And from what I can remember, throughout my entire playthrough, 25 plus hours, there was only one consequence for my actions, that being the death of Professor Fig, who I didn't realize actually died until about 20 minutes after he died. Like, if you wanted to do a goody two-shoes Gryffindor playthrough and not learn the unforgivable curses and choose all the positive dialogue options, then I'm sure the game is fairly immersive. But if you want that Dark Wizard playthrough, which, let's be honest, we all want to do, this is a role-playing game after all, there's not enough here to make the world feel like you're actually being a Dark Wizard. It's one of many examples of the game having a great idea, but not really going all the way with it. Like, it ultimately doesn't really matter if you're in Slytherin, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, or Ravenclaw. The game is generally the same except for your common room, the robes you wear, and one specific house quest. It's mainly cosmetic. A lot of people say that Hogwarts Legacy is a great open world Harry Potter game, but a bad RPG for the reasons we've just discussed. It's undeniably a fun and immersive open world that feels alive and brimming with things to do, but the RPG element of the game is undeniably lacking, as many of the RPG elements that the game has are very surface level or non-existent. So there is plenty to improve on here in a sequel. Moving on from that though, littered throughout the entire world are various activities that for the most part I found to be very enjoyable, but this is where after sinking a fair amount of time into the game, the world activities become quite tiresome. There are a million copy and pasted caves to explore, Merlin trials, astronomy tables, bandit camps, spider lairs, ancient magic hotspots, beast ends, bloom popping, and so much more. Now, some of these are actually quite fun to do, like clearing out bandit camps and spider lairs because that's combat related, but virtually everything else after the first few times you do it becomes the typical grindy Ubisoft style copy and paste world event that we know and hate. Now look, most of these world events you don't really need to do unless you want to 100% the game, but unfortunately, one of these world events is severely tied to a major flaw in the loot element of the game, those being Merlin trials. Inventory space is a big problem with Hogwarts Legacy, and the only way to expand your inventory space is pretty much by doing Merlin trial after Merlin trial after Merlin trial. And after the first 5 or so, these things become incredibly annoying, and during my recent playthrough, I kind of just put up with quick selling my inventory over and over again because I just couldn't be bothered doing another Merlin trial. Now, this does seem to be a universal complaint that many people have about the game, and to be honest, it's right up there with my biggest problems that the game has. Now look, I don't mind doing a couple Merlin trials around the castle grounds, but when you have to start exploring the southern regions of the map where, like I said earlier, there's nowhere near as much fun to be had down there as there is up near the castle, there's just no shot I'm scouring that landscape to do 35 Merlin trials so I can fit 5 more hats in my inventory slots. The world events within the castle itself, on the other hand, I think are all incredibly enjoyable. The puzzles you get to solve are fun and engaging. Stumbling across the Daedalian keys is a nice surprise, although the reward is totally not worth it. Even stumbling across a demiguise statue at night always made me happy so I can progress my lockpicking to explore more areas of the castle. But again, with the demiguise specifically, as soon as I need to search outside the castle in the southern region of the map specifically, I kind of lose the desire to. Again, the magic of this game is within the castle and its surrounding grounds, but in reality, that only takes up about 20% of the map. So although the map is absolutely massive, most of it I quite often found just wasn't that fun to explore. Like, it was fine, it served its purpose, but just nothing on the level of the top half of the map. But again, when you come back to the castle, even after 100%ing the game, it's still worth exploring, which is strange really. Even if I had nothing to do, walking around the halls of this iconic castle and stumbling across a student getting a howler is still really damn cool. Overall, I think the developers did a fantastic job with the world of Hogwarts Legacy. When you're in and around the castle or the Forbidden Forest or Hogsmeade, the top section of the map clearly got the most attention, and it shows. It's where you want to spend all your time, but the southern region, I just found a little bit stale. Despite that though, the way they brought this perfect blend of movies and books to life in video game form simply cannot be glossed over. They nailed the game in this aspect, and the most exciting thing is, there is still so much that they can build on in a sequel. The gameplay of Hogwarts Legacy is one of the most surprising aspects of the entire game. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting all that much from this game on the gameplay side. And this seems to be one aspect of Hogwarts Legacy that most people agree is incredibly strong. Focusing on the combat specifically, Hogwarts Legacy is absolutely incredible. We've come a long way from the movie tie-in games, that's for sure. Like, yeah, the world is cool and is probably the standout of the game, but the combat is definitely a close second. There is nothing more satisfying than dropping in on a group of enemies, using various spell combinations to pull off insane maneuvers, and be able to combo your way to wipe out a dozen enemies in 20 seconds. It's just super satisfying. As you progress through the game, you unlock new spells which can be used for everything from combat, traversal, puzzle solving, or to catch beasts. And as you unlock these spells, you upgrade talents that make the spells more effective. Now, depending on whether or not you did a Dark Wizard playthrough, you could choose to heavily focus on Dark Arts talents, or if you're a weirdo, Stealth and Room of Requirement. On the topic of stealth though, there are stealth mechanics in this game, but to be honest, given how fun the combat is, whenever I had the opportunity to sneak past a group of enemies or fight them, there was zero shot I was sneaking past. The combat in this game simply flows too well to stealth your way through everything. Now, if you do choose to learn the unforgivable curses, they are incredibly overpowered and can put a halt to the fluid nature of the game's combat. You can use Crucio and then Avada Kedavra, and anyone your Crucio spell hits will literally just drop dead. Like, it's incredibly overpowered, which, you know, makes sense given what the spells are. But if you feel like that's hindering the combat experience, you can just simply not use them and go back to comboing enemies. If there was any downside to the combat though, I'd say that more powerful enemies such as trolls can be a little spongy on the damage, leading you to cycle through spells and just spam your basic spell until they refresh. As for the boss fights in Hogwarts Legacy, I was actually kind of impressed by them for the most part. Certain boss battles require you to have a variety of spells equipped, and you don't get a long window to use them, so when you time your spells, it leads to super satisfying gameplay. Enemy variety here is also relatively decent. You've got Dark Wizards and Goblins, which are the main two you come up against. Both fight relatively similar, which means you don't really have to shake the gameplay up that much, but in the world itself, you'll come across spiders, Inferi, Darkbogs, Trolls, Wolves, and the list goes on. And many of them require you to switch up your playstyle and think about the engagements a little bit more than you otherwise would. And as for traversing the map with a broom, it's something you're going to be doing a lot, and the broom gameplay at first feels kind of awkward, but you do get used to it. Same goes for hippogriffs and the grapphorn. Traversal in brief stints in Hogwarts Legacy is fun, although it's not relatively deep. It's kind of just pull your broom out and go. The broom mechanics are extremely basic, which works fine, but if they ever did a sequel, I'd love to see them implement other mechanics which required a bit of skill, such as movement techniques and so on. I feel like if there was Quidditch in Hogwarts Legacy, the broom mechanics for general traversal would have been a little bit more in depth. Now, you level up in this game in a variety of ways, but one of those ways is looting the world and getting stronger gear. Now, we already spoke about the small inventory space being a problem, so I won't bring it up again. But the addition of a transmog system is a major plus for the game's customization because you need to equip certain gear to be leveled up enough to take on strong enemies. But most of the items you'll have to equip look absolutely ridiculous. Like Lord Voldemort ain't rocking this dude. But because you can transmog, you can make sure you're on track with the leveling up, but your drip is still intact. And Lord Voldemort is all about the drip. I often opted for my basic Slytherin outfit because I didn't want to look like a complete donut walking around the castle, but as my playthrough got darker and I started learning the unforgivable curses, my hood went up because that's what bad guys do. I seriously took my Slytherin playthrough way too seriously. Now, the Room of Requirement allows you to identify certain rare gear you find throughout the world. You can also upgrade it so it can become even more powerful, which I think was a cool addition. The Room of Requirement in general lends itself so perfectly to a game like this, and I think it was used pretty well. Personally, it just didn't hook me as much as I was hoping. You can decorate it as you wish, hold a bunch of beasts, brew potions, grow plants, but I often found myself skipping out on this side of the game in favor of going out into the world. This was large in part due to the fact that you don't really need to do a whole lot in the room of requirement to have a great experience playing this game. It's kind of just something you can do on the side if you want to. For example, potions. You don't really need them throughout the entire game. There's maybe like one side quest where you need a potion, but that's pretty much it. Like in general in the world itself, I think I used a potion maybe once or twice, and that's because I already had it there. So there are a lot of aspects to the gameplay that are here, but you don't necessarily need to use in order to have a good time. I must say, 1 year on from its release, I am still pretty impressed by the gameplay of Hogwarts Legacy overall. It's by no means an industry leader in terms of its core mechanics or its polish, but in terms of a Harry Potter game, I think this was pretty damn solid across the board, with the combat being the major standout. I still kind of really imagined a better way for them to make combat flow in a Harry Potter game. Like, seriously, man, this was just incredible. Now, before we dive into the story and side quests, it's probably worth mentioning the characters briefly. The character that you play as is essentially a chosen one archetype. I'm not saying that there's really anything wrong with that. It works for what this game is, but the standout of the long list of characters in this game is obviously Sebastian. I don't really think that's a hot take either. He is by far the most interesting character in this game, and story beats and side missions where he was involved were infinitely more interesting with just his presence alone. We see Sebastian go down a dark path to help save his sister, and you get drawn into it. And I loved every single step of the way. Sebastian stands out so much in this game because most characters here are fairly surface level. You do have dialogue options that helps to flesh them out, and some characters can at times be quite interesting, but no character in this game is on the level of Sebastian. Across the story of Hogwarts Legacy, we meet many characters, and some of them, like I said, can be interesting. Some are just bland stereotypes, and some made me just want to skip every single damn cutscene. The villains I found to be quite bland and pretty stereotypical, to be honest. There wasn't really anything overly interesting there, and I thought their ends were kind of underwhelming. As for the story of Hogwarts Legacy, it never really hooked me the first time I played it, and replaying the game again, it still didn't really hook me. The general gist of the story is you're starting your time at Hogwarts as a 5th year student, which is not normal. You also have a rare ability to see and use ancient magic. Two antagonists by the name of Ranrock and Rookwood seek the power for themselves, and due to your rare abilities, you go through a series of trials in order to uncover the secrets of your ancient magic. All of this while side quests weave into the story, and by the end you fight and defeat the villains. Now, I don't know if it's because I've just come off of a playthrough of The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us Part 2 back to back, both of which are very heavy on story and character. So when playing Hogwarts Legacy, I kind of just felt myself unable to engage with the story because it just felt like, I don't know, it might sound harsh, but a bit of a downgrade to go back to. Now, I'm not saying this story is terrible by any means, because it's not, but I feel like it's a means to an end more than anything. It's kind of there because we need a story to progress whilst we explore the world and do the things we're really here for. Don't get me wrong though, there are some great moments in this story. I did like seeing the division between wizard kind and goblins and how that was explored. I thought that was really interesting. And I think the character of Isadora was really interesting and had a lot of potential, even though she didn't really have much of a presence in the story. But the ending of the main story just felt kind of sudden and not really that impactful. Not to mention you use unforgivable curses in front of all of your teachers, and it's just like, it's fine. It's kind of weird. I think some side quests were honestly just way more interesting than the main story. The entire quest line where you learn the unforgivable curses was just amazing. I absolutely loved this, and I wish the main story hooked me as much as this quest line. Even though I've played the story of Hogwarts Legacy twice now, it kind of just went in one ear and out the other for me, which doesn't happen to me very often, as I really love getting in deep with story and character. But I just never really felt like there was a lot to get interested in with the game's main story, only Sebastian's side quests. I must say, I did like the structure of the game's storytelling and the overall pacing. You essentially have the option to complete 3 to 4 side and relationship quests, and then you go into a main story quest. Some you can skip if you want to, giving you the freedom to power through the story and pursue side quests that you want to pursue. You know, it always felt like you were busy, and that made my time with the game absolutely fly, despite the fact the main story didn't really work for me overall. I honestly think the story is just fine. It doesn't do anything insanely impressive. It doesn't do anything insanely offensive. It's kind of just a means to an end, fun little adventure that's there whilst we enjoy the real reason we're playing this game, that being a student at Hogwarts and getting up to no good. But to bring this one all together, Hogwarts Legacy, 1 year later, it's still great. The novelty of an open world Harry Potter game has definitely worn off a little bit, leaving me to be a little more accepting that the game does have some fundamental problems. Hogwarts Legacy is a game that does a lot, but doesn't necessarily excel at everything. It tries to be an RPG, it tries to be a Ubisoft-style open world with extreme fidelity, hours of side content, in-depth gameplay, and a massive map, but it only really nails a few aspects that it went for. The game's ambition can't be understated, and the fact this game didn't end up a dumpster fire given the development team's experience with big games like this is incredible. I think Hogwarts Legacy, when you strip the Harry Potter novelty away, it's a strong 7 out of 10 open world that is a solid game through and through. But the Harry Potter novelty really does help elevate what is otherwise a decent game into something that is truly incredible. Hogwarts Legacy, 1 year later, is undeniably a special experience for Harry Potter fans, but man, if they can iron out a few of the game's problems in a sequel, we could have an all-time open world game on our hands.